to support a package at $3.5 trillion, which is currently on the table. But those with the Poor People's Campaign say the top line number of the reconciliation package is already a compromise, and Congress should not scale back any provision. Today, the group, they took their message to Capitol Hill to make sure the millions of essential and low-wage workers, they're not forgotten in this process. They met with Capitol Hill staffers who have the ear of lawmakers and delivered a petition signed by over 100,000 people where they express the dire consequences of the country not reaching down to build from the bottom up. They see this reconciliation package discussed in Congress right now as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to help for Congress to help those who need this package the most. Take a listen.
The problem is we got stuck in, where is it Biden's plan or is it Manchin's plan? Is it trillion this or trillion that? Rather than, is this a plan that will lift the people in Arizona and the people in West Virginia and the people in North Carolina, Mississippi, who need it the most, who really have been the heroes and the sheroes during COVID, the essential workers. That's who you're voting against if you vote against this plan, the essential workers. People who were the first to go to work, first to get sick, first to get infected, first to die. The 140 million poor and low wealth people in this country, which is a criminal number when you think about us being the wealthiest nation in the world.
The proposed bill contains components of the president's Build Back Better agenda, with investments such as free community college, money for child care, expanding the child tax credit, increasing taxes on the wealthy, also investments in clean energy developments. Shannon.
Ariana, while we have you, could you give us an update on the status of negotiations among Democrats on passing President Biden's economic agenda?
Yeah, Leader Schumer in the Senate, Senator Chuck Schumer, and also Speaker Pelosi, they said that they want to pass the infrastructure bill as well as this reconciliation bill by the end of October. Today, Speaker Pelosi saying during her weekly presser that she's actually disappointed that Democrats will be unable to pass such a massive package, their 3.5 reconciliation package. But she says she wants to pass a bill that moderates as well as progressives are willing to support in Congress. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that update. Well, in America, more than 35 million people live at or below the poverty line. And with the rising cost of housing, transportation, and fees, their already stretched dollar is stretched even more. So joining me now on the high cost of being poor is Kendrick Thomas. He's a communications and event manager at Bread for the City, an agency dedicated to serving the poor of Washington, D.C. Plus David Peters, he's a financial advisor and the host of the podcast Accountable. Welcome to BNC Live, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Kendrick, I want to start with you. There are people working 40 hours and some of them even more than that every single week in this country, and they still can't escape the cycle of poverty because, well, wages, they remain stagnant, and the cost of living that continues to rise to astronomical amounts. So how did we get here in the first place?
Well, I personally think it's a systemic issue. This is an issue that's been going on in our country for years. The fact that we have people who are struggling to make ends meet, people who are living paycheck to paycheck. When you think about it, people who are making minimum wage or close to that amount, they pay about, I believe, about 80% of their income on necessities. About 40% of that is low budget housing. And so that doesn't leave a lot of room to be able to save for an emergency plan, to be able to save, to be able to get into a better situation. And that causes them to be able to stay in poverty, which is something that's not good. And I think this is an example of the government not doing their part in helping people get out of poverty. When you look at this country, a lot of the times it's centered around wealthy people. And that is not a good thing, because what's happening is that we're seeing a lot of people who are low income, who are staying at low income and not being able to move to the middle class. And not only that too, but we're seeing people who are middle class who are moving down to the low class as well because of the pandemic. And so this is just an example of the government overlooking the people who are low income and focusing more on the wealthy.
Well, you know, David, another thing that's being overlooked by so many people is the higher cost of food when you're poor. So why are basic items like milk and eggs higher in impoverished areas?
Well, I mean, right now we're in a time when inflation is high, and that is making it so that a lot of times that a lot of those necessities are higher cost. Also, in poorer areas, sometimes supply chain disruptions and things like that are driving up cost, and it is making what is an already difficult situation, what is an already tight budget for a family, it's making that worse. It's making it harder for them to make ends meet.
And what are you guys, I guess, telling or hearing from people with the rising cost of fees? Because I know people think, oh, we focus on milk, we focus on eggs, but look at all the fees associated with just living. For example, from a bank or your phone bill, your utility bills, especially if you're already stretching your dollars so thin and you're late on those payments, you now have to pay an even extra charge just to restore those services. So how does this play into the cycle of poverty and low-income American homes?
It definitely plays into the poverty. And you mentioned a lot of things that contribute to the actual high cost of living. But think about it. Let's say someone has a newborn. Now that's diapers. Diapers are not cheap. They cost a lot of money as well. And then you're also thinking about getting to actual work, transportation, whether you're driving, so you need gas, or whether you rely on public transportation. That actually costs money as well. And so it's really just a cycle. And they continue to be in the cycle. And at Bread for the City, we hear from a lot of people who have been struggling, who have been trying to make ends meet. They work and they work, and now they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're unable to get out of that cycle. And nonprofit organizations like Bread for the City, we work really hard. We offer programs to be able to help them, but it really also is really big on the government. The government needs to be able to provide assistance, focus more on people who are living in poverty to be able to help them get out. It's a systemic issue. Most people who are in poverty is not there by choice. A lot of the time it's because of the systemic system that we have in this country that keeps them there.
Well, David, he says, it's the government's responsibility. I know your podcast is accountable. So who should we hold accountable, and which aspect of the government should we be going after to help with this issue?
Well, I think that that the government is certainly plays a part in that. I also think, though, too, that part of it is that we, as a society, there are things in place that encourage overspending. One of the primary examples that is out there now is buy now, pay later loans, which essentially allows people to pay for things over time. And it sounds really good, I think, because a lot of people, they look at big purchases and they say, hey, if it's a $600 purchase and I can pay only $50 now and I can pay the rest over time, well, then I have more money in my pocket. And really, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that you're actually decreasing the cash flow that you're going to have in your pocket in the future, in future months. And so I think that the practices that we see right now in terms of lending, we need more regulation around those practices, and especially buy now, pay later loans. I think that that is one where our laws have fallen behind. And I think just people having a better understanding of what they're spending their money on, I think would also be helpful.
All great points. Thank you both so much for joining us on this very important topic. All right, in other news, a flag on the play for an NFL coach. The Raiders head coach John Gruden making a bad